What if I told you 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even a couple months ago, that college basketball had a loophole so large and so out of control that you can go pro, sign real professional contracts, and then still end up playing college basketball weeks later? Because as of now, as I film this January 22nd, 2026, that is not a hypothetical. That is real life. At the University of Alabama, former Crimson Tide center Charles Bediako, who has been in the pro pipeline for over 2 years, declared for the draft in 2023, was just temporarily cleared to play after a local judge stepped in to give him eligibility. Now, he's not the only one. At the University of Baylor, the Bears added James Nnaji, a 2023 NBA draft pick. He was cleared to play college basketball mid-season. And if your reaction is, wait, how is that allowed? Congratulations, your brain still works. Today on Random SEC, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what happened, why it matters, why it exposes what's wrong in college basketball, and how to fix it fast, because this cannot be sustainable. This is Random SEC. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow us on all socials at the Random SEC. Thanks. So let's start with James Nnaji. James Nnaji is a 7-footer who was selected 31st overall in the 2023 NBA draft. He never played in an official NBA game, but did appear in NBA Summer League and spent years playing professionally in Europe, most notably with FC Barcelona. Then, on Christmas Eve 2025, Baylor signs him, and in a move that made coaches across the country spit out a coffee, the NCAA clears him to play. The coaches weren't just surprised, they were furious, because this isn't testing the waters. This is not an underclassman declaring, getting feedback and coming back. This isn't a guy just going to the combine. This is a guy who was drafted, played in the pros, in the G League, in Europe, and came back to play college basketball during the season, no less. And coaches, with every right, have expressed their complaints with it, and here are just a few.
So if you put your name in the draft, I don't care if you're from Russia, and you stay in the draft, you can't play college basketball.
Why not? I mean, if that's what we're going through, shame on the NCAA. You know, shame on the coaches too, but shame on the NCAA because
take on that. Yeah, we just want to know the rules so we can abide by them. Like we don't know.
And some Baylor fans or some college basketball fans in general are skeptics, and they say, well, okay, but if he never signed an NBA contract, never played in an NBA game, what's the harm? Here's the harm. This rewires the entire talent ecosystem. Now the best teams aren't just recruiting high school stars and transfers, they're competing for something brand new, mid-season pro-level reinforcements. So your team that you made at the beginning of the year can change mid-season by picking up a player who could be in the NBA, and who's to say this isn't the gateway for players who have played in the NBA and are now going to play college basketball. That takes us to the Alabama Crimson Tide center Charles Bediako and the courtroom workaround. Now, the Alabama story takes it from wild to this sport is being run by lawsuits. Now, if you don't know, Charles Bediako played at Alabama from 2021 to 2023, helping them reach the NCAA tournament twice, go into the Sweet 16, go into the Elite 8, and many more. After going undrafted in 2023, he didn't just train, he went fully professional, signing developmental deals and bouncing through the NBA ecosystem, including a two-way contract with the San Antonio Spurs in 2023, plus time connected to multiple organizations. And now, if you don't know, a two-way NBA contract means you are signed to the San Antonio Spurs and their G League farm system. So, although he didn't play in an NBA game, he was still part of the San Antonio Spurs' actual NBA team, and he was part of their G League team as well, where he played a lot of minutes. Then, in January 2026, Bediako wants to return to Alabama. He has 1 year of eligibility left. He's only used 3. The NCAA says no, so Bediako sues. And on January 21st, 2026, a judge grants a temporary restraining order that makes him immediately eligible and blocks the NCAA from threatening or imposing penalties, at least for now. The order is short-term, and a hearing is set for the following week. Well, you may be asking, why, if the NCAA said no, can't he just sue and get his way? Well, A few years back, when all the NIL and transfer portal chaos started, rules were set in place to that Congress had the highest say in college basketball. So, if a player or coach or whoever it is unsatisfied with the outcome that the NCAA has put in place, they can sue the NCAA, take it to Congress, and do it that way. But what's interesting about the Alabama case, and that we haven't seen before, is Charles Bediako didn't go to the federal court or even just a random court at all. No, he went to a small town court in Alabama where the judge was actually a University of Alabama sports donor. So this judge was an Alabama fan, and he's just trying to help his team, from what it seems like. Temporary restraining order is what the NCAA gave him, or Congress. Immediately eligibility, meaning he has 10 days of eligibility before the hearing. Let that sink in. The eligibility gatekeeper wasn't the NCAA, it wasn't a rule book, it was an Alabama donor judge. It was a courtroom. And this is the moment where college basketball is broken, stops being a hot take, and becomes a description. So what's the real issue here? I've made my thoughts on this pretty vocal online, and I've gotten some pushback from Alabama fans and Baylor fans especially. They say, well, it's no different than European professional players being in college basketball. That's been happening for years, even before the NIL and transfer portal era. And I say to compare the two is completely ridiculous. If you don't know how the international system works for basketball, for professional basketball, most of the European players, if not like 99% of them who come to play college basketball, are guys who play professional basketball from ages 12 to 17 or 18. The professional system there is more like the high school system in America. So these players, while getting paid, aren't actually quote-unquote professionals yet, as the fact that they are still the same age as high schoolers, still playing the same level of basketball, still going to school, but it's just they are getting paid. This is totally different. They haven't entered the NBA draft. They haven't expanded their reach to higher levels of professional basketball. They are simply playing because they want to play basketball at the highest level that you can do it internationally. But when these players want to take the next step, college basketball is where you go. So instead of these players remaining in overseas professional basketball where they grew up, they go to college basketball. And yes, they've been paid before, but they haven't entered the draft. They are simply players from different countries playing different ways than high school basketball, but still having the opportunity to play college basketball. I get the sentiment. Why let some professional players play, but not all? But I'll explain later why that is so messed up and what really needs to change. But before I do that, let's break down what the actual problem is, the core problem. So what's the real issue here? Because it's not players shouldn't have freedom. Players should have freedom. Coaches and schools have been maneuvering for decades. Players deserve to get a piece of the pie. The problem is that college basketball is now operating in a system where, number one, the NCAA rulebook isn't a rulebook anymore. Rules only matter if they're enforceable, but the NCAA keeps getting challenged, losing leverage, losing lawsuits, and responding with case-by-case decisions that feel inconsistent. 1 month, a line is drawn. The next month, someone with better lawyers steps over it. That's not governance, that's improvisation. Number two, competitive balance is turning into legal financial balance. If eligibility can be won in court, the winners aren't just smart programs, they're programs with the biggest legal resources, the fastest filings, and the most aggressive strategies. If you're a mid-major or a power conference team without that infrastructure, you're playing a different sport. And it's not just about money or funding, it's about simply who you have that can get your players eligible from pro teams. Number three, roster building has no guardrails. College basketball used to have a rhythm, and even this past year it had a rhythm. Even with the transfer portal and NIL, it had a rhythm. Recruiting classes, off-season portal, early entry decisions, and a fairly stable lineup once conference play begins. Now, you can theoretically at a former pro in late December or January and change the trajectory of a season overnight. Teams that would prepare for you before now have to prepare for a player that hasn't been playing all year. They don't have any film on him, and he can come whenever he wants, so he's a total wild card. And that's what Tennessee is going to have to deal with this Saturday as they face Alabama and have to play Charles Bediako, who hasn't played in college basketball in 3 years. Rick Barnes and company are going to have to succumb to that and battle that, which is completely unfair. That just doesn't impact parity, it impacts trust. Fans don't know what teams even are anymore. Number 4, the student-athlete frame is collapsing under reality. Let's be honest, the top of college basketball is a professional marketplace now. NIL, agents, revenue sharing conversations, constant roster turnover, and all that is, while it could be seen as a problem and it definitely needs rules, it isn't too bad compared to what's happening now, because players are coming mid-season, and they're definitely not coming for a degree. They are coming simply for the college basketball season, thus taking the student part of student athlete completely out. The governance structure still tries to treat it like an amateur model, with a few exceptions. That mismatch is where chaos lives. But instead of talking about all what's wrong, we need a solution. And I think I have a pretty decent idea on how to do that. So just hear me out. Okay, so what can actually be done? Here are fixes that don't require pretending we're going back to 2008. Create one clear pro-participation rule and make it universal. You need a single bright light standard that everyone can understand. If you sign a professional contract above a defined threshold, you are ineligible. If you are drafted but never signed, define exactly what is allowed and what isn't. If you play in specific pro leagues, define whether it counts and how. No more this guy yes, this guy no, because it causes confusion. And what I would do is I would have anybody who ever declared for the NBA draft foregoes their eligibility. Coach Calipari of Arkansas talked about this, and exactly what he said was, if you go to the draft, you can't play anymore, and if you have no eligibility left, you can't play anymore. So you go to the draft, no more eligibility. You are out of eligibility. You played too many years of college basketball, no more eligibility. And even if you do that, there will still be some controversies on eligibility. Right now, too much happens through private interpretation and one-off approvals. Eligibility decisions should have written reasoning, consistent precedent, and a public-facing explanation. If the NCAA or whoever governs next can't explain decisions clearly, people will assume the system is being gamed, because it is. And the last piece, lock roster eligibility after a real deadline. Now, this isn't even just for the pro things. This is for transfers. This is for signing high school players. At a certain point, players cannot be able to join a team. Your team is cemented at a certain point, and in my opinion, it should be right when the season starts. Although I can see a couple exceptions, like players who have been waiting for their eligibility to be granted, but they've already signed. Like, the only example I can think of now is Zvonimir Ivkovic. He signed with Kentucky in the summer, but the NCAA didn't grant him his eligibility from Europe, or I can't remember what country he's from, until about early December, and so we didn't get to play till early December. That's fine, because he already signed. So if you're signed before the first game of the season, I think that should be enough. You can play. But anything after that, no, you can't play. That is absolutely ridiculous. So when people say college basketball is broken, this is what they mean. It's not that players are being empowered. It's that the system has no stable, enforceable foundation for how empowerment works. Baylor adding James Nnaji, an NBA draft pick cleared midseason, and Alabama getting Charles Bediako temporarily eligible through a court order. These aren't random stories. They're warning lights, because if this becomes more normal, which I think it will, because coaches want to win, coaches will take whatever things they want to win. The next step is obvious. More former pros try it. More programs chase it. More lawsuits happen, and the rules become whichever side files first. If the sport doesn't define what college basketball is, someone else will. And that someone else might be the courts. And before I finish this video, I just want to say I don't blame Scott Drew, head coach at Baylor, or Nate Oates, head coach at Alabama, for the way they've handled this. I blame them a little bit because, you're part of setting this precedent that it can be done, that it will be done. But at the end of the day, this is on the NCAA. This is on who controls college basketball. It's a bigger problem than that. It's a bigger problem than just the coaches. But for guys like Nate Oates, who called out Baylor when James Nnaji did it, he said it takes away from high school players who we can recruit and transfers like that. But then he goes and does it himself. I think that's very hypocritical, and he elaborates more. But at the end of the day, it's a problem with the people in charge. Do we even know who's in charge? We have similar problems in college football, and I think if we don't get these things set in order, it's only going to get worse until we lose the sport we love. And that's not what we want. If you want more deep dives like this, please subscribe and tell me in the comments, should former pros ever be allowed back in college basketball? And if so, where's the line? This is Random SEC. Please subscribe. We are a growing YouTube channel. We are pretty good on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. So follow us there if you want all the best updates for SEC basketball, football, and baseball, and college sports in general. This is Random SEC, and thank you for watching.